You brought up the ceasefire talks. Currently, those are happening in Cairo right now. Have the strikes we've seen over the weekend, will that do anything to potential negotiations? I know that they're snagging, as you said. So what can we expect from them?
I think they're operating on two parallel tracks that sometimes overlap, right? And where Nasrallah has said that Hamas is negotiating not just on behalf of itself, but on behalf of the entire resistance axis. And therefore, the rest of the resistance axis is going to operate according to the ceasefire talks. There's still its own internal dynamic, namely Israeli control of the Philadelphia corridor, hostage release versus security prisoner release. What security prisoners are the Israelis willing to release? What deployment they'll have in Gaza after these ceasefire talks? Will they be able to reserve the right to resume military operations? Because as far as I know, the Israelis have not backed down, nor should they really, from the goal of dismantling Hamas militarily and as a governmental structure. If they leave a nucleus of Hamas there, the organization will rebuild and continue to threaten Israel. Obviously, Hamas, from its perspective, does not want to be destroyed or dismantled or have its military or governmental capabilities wiped out. So we're seeing this snag. At the same time, we saw the Qataris today, I think it was the Qatari foreign minister, had visited Iran for meetings to ask the Iranians to continue delaying their response because to give ceasefire negotiations enough time to succeed. So it doesn't seem like those ceasefire negotiations, for all of the drama and tension that is going on, have entirely been called off. But both sides are trying to maximize their leverage in their gains.
I want to talk about your thoughts on the United States' response, because Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin said this over the weekend. He said he spoke with the Israeli Minister of Defense, and he said, quote, he reaffirmed the United States' ironclad commitment to Israel's defense against any attacks by Iran and its regional partners and proxies. The U.S. has also consistently said that they don't want to see escalation in the region. What do you make of our response?
I think it's not consistent, unfortunately. The way that Israel's adversaries, who are actually our adversaries, perceive this is, I'll quote Nasrallah from, I believe it was in March, where he said, if the Americans put their foot down, the Israelis quake in fear. He was talking about the dynamic of the relationship between Israel and the United States, negating the idea that there's a Jewish lobby that controls America, that Israel controls America. He said, no, the opposite. Again, he said, when the Americans put their foot down, the Israelis quake in fear. When the Americans stop weapons shipments, the IDF chief of staff takes out his little ledger and starts counting how many artillery shells he has left over. So they understand through this, right? What he was trying to say is that Israel's freedom of action is basically controlled in Washington. It basically comes from Washington. And he didn't explicitly say this, but the less freedom of action that they perceive the Israelis as having, the more freedom of action that they perceive themselves as having, right? Because they understand that they can raise the threshold, they can push the limit, they can come up to Israel's red lines, maybe even push them a little bit. And because of that American restraint on Israeli freedom of action, Israel is going to have to tolerate it, and Hezbollah can be assured that it will not be subject to a wider campaign, an Israeli campaign in Lebanon, because of this American restraint on Israel. So we need to be more consistent, I think, here in the United States.